If you want to use ovulation predictor kits, which one do you buy and how do you know which one's going to be best for you? So if you've ever used them before, you know that ovulation predictor kits measure LH, which tells you when you are about to ovulate. Your LH will surge and then you ovulate between 12 to 36 hours later. So you use these ovulation predictor kits, OPKs for short, to basically tell you when to time intercourse. Last I checked, there were about 50 different kinds on the market, so I'm hoping to narrow it down for you a little bit in terms of which one might interest you and just suit you the best. So the first thing that I want you to know is there are actually 3 different patterns to LH surges. So some women, actually about 40% of women, are only going to have that LH surge for 8 hours, meaning it's really important if you are this pattern to test twice a day. Otherwise, you might miss that surge. So the pattern kind of looks like this. It's going to peak and then fall off really, really quickly. So if you test in the morning, then you might actually miss it because it's going to look low both mornings and it's only going to be reading as high in the afternoon. Some women have what we call a plateau, and so they might actually get a couple days in a row of a higher reading, and that last day is going to be your actual surge, and then ovulation 12 to 36 hours after that. And some women actually have kind of this multi-peak, meaning their body tries to get them to ovulate and it doesn't quite work. And so they'll get a high LH reading and then it'll come back down and then it'll look high again. And that last peak hopefully was the successful one. In terms of, which one, is a pattern that's better or worse, not necessarily. You can absolutely get pregnant on any one of those patterns. But what I would say is more important is knowing your pattern. If you are that multi-peak, there's a chance you might have PCOS. That could be something to look into further if you haven't already. So clinically, what I see is, I work with women who work with a fertility clinic and they're actually measuring LH in the blood. And some women have a tiny surge. So they might go from like a 10 to a 12, right? And that's their surge. And to put it into context, some women might go from like a baseline of like 25 to a surge of 50. So that's what it looks like in the blood, and it's going to pick up a little bit differently in the urine on the OPKs. So what you really, again, I said this already, but you need to know is not when your exact actual ovulation happens or even when your exact surge happens. You just need to know a window in which to time intercourse ahead of time. Ideally 3 days ahead of time, ahead of ovulation, to catch that egg when it is released. So of the different kinds on the market, you have most of them are the cheap internet strips. Cheap, you buy them in quantity off the internet and you dip them into your urine that you've collected in a cup, and it's going to show you 2 lines. A control line and then the LH line, similar to a pregnancy test. And then the darkness of the line is basically going to tell you whether that is your surge or not. Some are what we call semi-quantitative, which means they do the same thing, but then you take a picture and put them into an app, and the app is going to actually read that for you and tell you, analyze whether that reading was its peak or whether it's high. Or whether you're not there yet. So that's pretty cool. You don't have to be squinting at your lines going, is this one darker than that one? The app kind of does it for you. And then there are some that are quantitative that actually will either measure an LH number for you or give you like a smiley face, or will just kind of give you a more of a yes or no. That, again, you don't have to be squinting over the lines. So those are some of them that are on the market. Fertility Friend, which is one of the big apps that women use in the fertility world mostly to do temp tracking, but basically Fertility Friend also allows users to input a lot of data And they did a big analysis of the data that was used, including the LH strips, and found that there wasn't a big difference in terms of accuracy, because these women were backing up that ovulation prediction with a temp, right? And so the temp is going to tell you when that actual ovulation occurred. So it found there wasn't a big difference in accuracy between these different types of LH strips. It was mostly like more down to user preference at that point, right? Like which ones are easier to use or not. And then another company called Prove, which I've talked about before, I love them. They measure progesterone after ovulation, but the owner, Amy, or the founder actually, did this big experiment on herself with ovulation predictor kits. So she did 13 different types of kits, different brands. And that was super interesting to me. They posted all of those results kind of as they were going on their stories. So that's PROOV, Prove, on their Instagram. But they also did a write-up on their blog. So they called it Amy's Epic Ovulation Predictor Kit Experiment. So you can find that on their blog too. And I'll just kind of summarize some of what they found. So she found, of kind of the cheapy strip tests, the ones that you dip, that femometer was the easiest to read. It would like show pretty much nil, nil, nil until it was an actual LH reading. So she found that one the easiest to kind of tell yes or no what was happening. Then of the ones that gave either a numerical value or had an app to tell you what to read them, she found that the Pre-Mom was really good, that the app was really good at reading the strips, and that one was the cheapest of the ones with readers. So that includes the Mira, like ones that give you a quantitative number as well. And then the longest fertile window. So these ones actually measured estrogen metabolites as well. So estrogen starts to rise in the follicular phase before LH kind of does its thing. It signals LH. And so it can give you kind of a longer heads up of when your fertile window is opening, and then the LH surge closes it, right? So that's kind of your fertile window. Oh, well, ovulation closes it technically, but we have that kind of bit of a longer time span. So these ones, the ones that gave her the longest fertile window, were the Clear Blue Advanced Digital and Pearl Fertility. So they both measure estrogen and gave her more of a heads up. And they gave her like a 5-day fertile window versus just LH alone is giving you basically 1 to 2 days, no matter which type you use. So I found that super interesting. Like I said, read about it on their blog. You might find kind of more of your questions answered on there. But just please don't forget, you don't need to know exactly when that ovulation happens. You just need to have timed intercourse ahead of time, early enough in your cycle. Hope that helps. Let me know if you have any questions.